Sony tried to force Helldivers 2 Steam players to connect to a PSN account. Now this is a bit of a saga, so stick with me here. Helldivers 2 on Steam, when it was initially released, required a PlayStation Network or PSN account in order to connect online and play the game, as stated on the Steam page. However, due to technical issues during launch, the requirement was made optional. On Friday, May 3rd, Sony was now saying this initial grace period had expired, and all new players starting on May 6th would be required to connect to PSN, while existing players would have until June 4th, with a mandatory login appearing May 30th. The reason for this was supposed to be security issues, but many are not believing this considering Sony's history of information breaches. Speaking of, the community backlash has been swift and abundant. Many feel the requirement is unnecessary and just an attempt by Sony to gain more customer information. Players have expressed that making this requirement 3 months after launch is too late and especially harmful to those who don't have access to PSN in their country. As a result, players are threatening to stop playing the game and review bombing it on Steam and passively aggressively reviewing Helldivers 2's developer Arrowhead Games' other titles on Steam that don't require a PSN account. Others are requesting refunds, which Steam is granting regardless of playtime, as they agree that the EULA has been altered from the game's initial release. After the initial announcement and backlash, Arrowhead CEO Johan Pelestad pointed the rage at PlayStation to make it clear that while he knew that this was coming and apologized for not making it more clear, Sony are responsible for the requirement and not the developer. The negative reviews grew to 215,000, and the game was pulled from 177 countries, many of which do not have access to PSN. Finally, Sunday evening of May 5th, Sony reversed course and announced they were canceling the PSN account requirement. As a result, the community is attempting to undo the negative reviews that plagued the game, calling the community movement Operation Cleanup, and has managed to change the reception from overwhelmingly negative to mixed, with 72,000 positive reviews. The game is still pulled from those 177 countries, but the developer is working on restoring them back. So this was a complete shit show, and to be a little bit controversial, I'm kind of surprised that it actually came to this point, because while I understand why people wouldn't like having to sign into PlayStation Network and putting their information out there just for Sony to use to market to them or God knows what else, and also I don't believe the whole security reasons that they were giving. I mean, you really had to do that if you wanted to play it on console, so I don't really see it as being that big of a deal. That being said, you can't help but admire the gumption of all these players, because over 200,000 negative reviews from a player base that was already in the 100,000s, that's a significant portion of your audience that could possibly be leaving and are aware of what's going on, not to mention are motivated enough to even go out of their way to negatively review the game. Even though a lot of people will say that, usually when stuff like this happens, the companies will just brush it off, maybe take a minor loss in the short term, and then long term it ends up not even mattering. They possibly could have done that, PlayStation, but that was a significant portion of the user base that was not happy. I mean, it's got to be like half or a third or something extremely significant like that. Not to mention it could have been even more, and the ones that were also going to leave were maybe not even leaving, negative reviews or something. So like, this was a disaster, a PR disaster. So I think Sony pretty much had to reverse course and be like, okay, we're not going to do this. I didn't mention it here because I mentioned it in a previous Colorwind News backpage news episode that I did, but Ghost of Tsushima is going to be coming out next week on PC, and that is going to require a PSN account if you want to play the Legends Online mode. If you want to just play the single player campaign, it will not require it. It seems so interesting to me that Sony couldn't have just done something, anything to just incentivize people to do this, because right now it was just a net positive. Even with me thinking that it's not really that big of a deal, it's not like this was going to be something good for the game to do. I have to sign into this thing. It takes me a little bit longer now to log in and play the game, and the benefits were nothing. It was a net negative. Even if it was just a minor negative, it was still a negative, and there was no reason to do that for a game that last time I heard was the highest selling game of this year. It's unbelievable that Sony nearly just destroyed its biggest success this year, and a surprising one at that, because no one knew that Helldivers Helldivers 2 was going to be this popular and this good. I am a little curious as to what's going to happen to those 177 countries that still haven't gotten the game back since this whole fiasco happened. I think it would be extremely hurtful to the game again if they did not restore them. I wonder if the outcry from the community will once again rise up if those countries are not reinstated and allowed to start selling and play the game anymore, but I guess we'll just have to see about that. So yeah, this has been just a complete whirlwind that happened within about 3 to 4 days. So let me know in the comments what you think about this whole fiasco. I'm sure you've heard about it, and follow for more gaming news.